Hello and welcome everyone. I am here to discuss on handling and management of hazardous waste. This module is under the paper Environmental Health in the subject of Social Medicine and Community Health. This module has been developed by a team and the team members are myself, Dr. Madhutandra Sarkar as content writer, Dr. V.M. Gupta as paper coordinator and Dr. C.P. Mishra as principal investigator as well as content reviewer. This module has been developed with the intention that after completing this module, the students will be able to define hazardous waste and describe its characteristics, list the sources of hazardous wastes and describe its classification, understand the public health and environmental effects of hazardous waste, understand the existing scenario of hazardous waste management in India, and last but not the least, they will be able to explain the handling and management of hazardous waste in India. Wastes are materials which are discarded after use at the end of their intended lifespan. Waste management is a collective activity involving segregation, collection, transportation, reprocessing, recycling, and disposal of various types of waste. Sustainable waste management involves managing waste in an environmentally sound, socially satisfactory, and a techno-economically viable manner. The term hazardous denotes the potential of a substance to pose a threat to life or material. Any waste that, by virtue of any of its physical, chemical, reactive, toxic, flammable, explosive, or corrosive characteristics causes danger or is likely to cause danger to human health or the environment, whether alone or when in contact with other waste or substances, is defined as hazardous waste. The hazardous waste substance can be solid, semi-solid, or non-aqueous liquid. They differ in their quantity, concentration, or physical, chemical, or infectious characteristics. Some examples of hazardous waste include used or spent oil, discarded asbestos, pesticides, solvents, etc. There are a number of ways to classify the hazardous waste based on its characteristics. However, it can also be classified as recyclable, incinerable, or landfillable in respect of its end treatment or disposal. The hierarchy of options for hazardous waste management includes reduction at source, that is cleaner technologies, recovery of resources, reuse of resources, recycling of resources, incineration, and secured landfill with post-closure liability. The management of hazardous waste is the responsibility of the waste generators like commercial establishments, industries, and the pollution control boards. The hazardous waste have become an important environmental and public health issue across many countries in the world. The rapid industrialization is associated with generation of large quantities of hazardous waste which need to be properly handled and disposed of to avoid contamination of soil, groundwater, and other components of the environment. The hazardous waste can cause or significantly contribute to an increase in mortality or an increase in serious illness. They can pose a substantial present or potential hazard to human health or the environment when it is improperly treated, stored, transported, disposed of, or otherwise managed. Effective management and handling of hazardous waste is therefore of paramount importance for protection of human health and the environment. In India, rapid economic growth is leading to urbanization and industrialization, generating large amount of waste, which is adversely affecting the environment. The Hazardous Waste Management, Handling and Transboundary Movement Rules 2008 are the primary regulations addressing the management of hazardous waste in India. What is hazardous waste? How to define it? From the viewpoint of application of the hazardous waste management and handling rules, waste can be classified as hazardous if the waste substance is solid, semi-solid, or non-aqueous liquid which, because of its quantity, concentration, or physical, chemical, or infectious characteristics may cause or significantly contribute to an increase in mortality or an increase in serious, irreversible, or incapacitating reversible illness, or pose a substantial present or potential hazard to human health or the environment when it is improperly treated, stored, transported, or disposed of or otherwise managed. A waste is hazardous if it exhibits, whether alone or when in contact with other waste or substances, any of the characteristics such as corrosiveness, reactivity, ignitability or flammability, toxicity, explosiveness, acute toxicity, and infectivity. What are the characteristics of hazardous waste? These are corrosivity, reactivity, ignitability or flammability, toxicity, explosiveness, acute toxicity, infectivity. What are the sources of hazardous waste? All industries generate some hazardous waste, some common waste and industrial sources. This table shows some common waste categories with their examples and their sources. First, flammable waste, for example, solvents. Sources are chemical manufacturers, laundries and dry cleaners, metal plating, tanneries, print shops, etc. Corrosive waste, for example, acid and alkali. And the sources are cleaning and maintenance, equipment repair, vehicle body shops, etc. Reactive waste, for example, bleaches and oxidizers. And the sources are chemical manufacturers, laboratories, etc. And last, toxic and ecotoxic waste, for example, heavy metals, pesticides, cyanides. And the sources are metals, manufacturing, photographic processing, pesticides, end users, etc. In the United States, the largest quantities come from the following 5 sectors, such as chemical and pharmaceutical manufacture, metals refining, petroleum and coal products, metal working and fabrication, rubber and plastics manufacture. Most hazardous waste in India are generated by highly polluting industries that fall into 17 major categories. And these are aluminium smelter, caustic soda, cement, copper smelter, distilleries, drugs and pharmaceuticals, dyes and dye intermediates, fertilizer, integrated iron and steel, leather processing including tanneries, oil refineries, pesticides, petrochemicals, pulp and paper, sugar, thermal power plants, and zinc smelter. Next, classification of hazardous waste. Hazardous waste can be classified by list, for example, United States Environmental Protection Agency list. It can be classified by origin, for example, specific processes generating hazardous waste. Classification by hazardous characteristics, for example, toxic waste, reactive waste. Classification by chemical, biological and physical properties, for example, inorganic waste, organic waste. First, classification by list, that is USEPA list. The F list waste from non-specific sources, for example, spent solvent waste, electroplating and other metal finishing waste, dioxin bearing waste, etc. Next, the K list waste. Those are source-specific waste. The industries that generate K-list waste are pesticides manufacturing, petroleum refining, iron and steel production, etc. The P-list identifies acute hazardous waste from discarded commercial chemical products. And lastly, the U-list identifies hazardous waste from discarded commercial chemical products. Here, CFR denotes Code of Federal Regulations. Next, classification by origin, that is specific processes generating hazardous waste. The Basel Convention's list of hazardous waste categories Y1 to Y18 identifies waste from specific processes. For example, Y1 denotes clinical waste, Y6 denotes waste from the production and use of organic solvents, and Y18 denotes residues from industrial waste disposal operations. Third is classification by hazardous characteristics. Toxic waste. These are harmful or fatal when ingested, inhaled, or absorbed through the skin. Examples include spent cyanide solutions, waste pesticides, etc. Ignitable waste. These can create fires under certain conditions or are spontaneously combustible. Examples include waste oils, used solvents, organic cleaning materials, paint waste, etc. Reactive waste are unstable under normal conditions, can cause explosions, toxic fumes, gases, or vapors. Examples include peroxide solutions, hypochlorite solutions, or solids, etc. Next, corrosive waste. Acids or alkalis that are capable of dissolving human flesh and corroding metals such as storage tanks and drums. Examples include acids from metals cleaning processes, for example, ferric chloride from printed circuit board manufacture, nickel from steel manufacture, etc. And lastly, ecotoxic waste. These are harmful or fatal to other species or to the ecological integrity of their habitats, and examples include heavy metals, etc. Next, classification is possible by chemical, biological, and physical properties of hazardous waste, like inorganic waste, for example, acids, alkalis, heavy metals, cyanides, wastewaters from electroplating; organic waste, for example, pesticides, halogenated and non-halogenated solvents, polychlorinated biphenyls; oily waste, for example, lubricating oils, hydraulic fluids, contaminated fuel oils; and sludge, for example, from metal working, painting, wastewater treatment. Next, coming to public health and environmental effects of hazardous waste. Hazardous waste can damage the environment by contaminating air, water, and soil. Once in the environment, hazardous waste can affect all life forms. Whether through direct exposure or environmental damage, hazardous waste present a risk to human health. Health effects from hazardous waste exposure occur after hazardous components enter the body through inhalation, skin absorption, ingestion, or puncture wound. These threats vary greatly depending on the type of hazardous waste at issue. The health effects of the hazardous waste are also dependent on the amount and routes and duration of exposure. Temporary health effects of hazardous waste exposure can include dizziness, headaches, and nausea. Prolonged exposure can result in cancers, disabilities, or death. Long-term exposure may also increase the risk of developmental and reproductive disorders, immune system disruption, endocrine disruption, central nervous system disorders. Safety effects resulting from hazardous waste include injury and even death from an explosion, fire outbreak, chemical reaction, or other hazardous situation created by such waste. Contamination of soil, groundwater, surface water, and other media degrade the functioning of ecosystems by affecting the health of various plant and animal species. The effects vary widely from site to site depending on the species, contaminant, and ecosystem involved. In addition to harming plant and animal communities, these changes can lead to a reduction in the benefits, both direct and indirect, that ecosystems provide to humans. Next, existing scenario of hazardous waste management in India. As a rapidly developing nation, India is struggling with the growing challenge of managing its hazardous waste. A report on National Inventory of Hazardous Waste Generating Industries and Hazardous Waste Management in India, published by the Central Pollution Control Board in February 2009, reveals that a total of about 36,165 number of hazardous waste generating industries in India generate total quantity of about 6.23 million tons per annum of hazardous waste, out of which landfillable hazardous waste is about 2.73 million tons, that is 44%. Incinerable hazardous waste is about 0.41 million tons, that is 7%, and recyclable hazardous waste is about 3.09 million tons, that is 49%. As per the current information obtained from the State Pollution Control Boards (SPCBs) or Pollution Control Committees (PCCs), it is estimated that there are about 41,523 number of hazardous waste generating industries in India, generating about 7.90 million tons of hazardous waste per annum. This waste can be categorized from the disposal point of view into three components, such as landfillable 3.32 million tons per annum, that is 42%, recyclable 3.98 million tons per annum, that is 50.4%, and incinerable, that is 0.60 million tons per annum. Maharashtra, Gujarat, and Andhra Pradesh are the top three hazardous waste generating states in India. Thereafter, Rajasthan, Tamil Nadu, Madhya Pradesh, and Chhattisgarh states are in the second line with a generation of more than 2.5 lakh tons per annum. These 7 states together are generating about 82% of the country's total hazardous waste. The common treatment, storage, and disposal facilities, that is TSDFs, are facilities used by various units or industries for treatment, storage, and disposal of their hazardous waste on charge basis. These are useful for small and medium scale hazardous waste generating industries which cannot set up their own TSDFs. The common TSDFs may have only secured landfill facilities or both secured landfill and incineration facilities, that is integrated common TSDFs. The generators have the option of recycling or reprocessing or co-processing or utilization of hazardous waste prior to the ultimate option of disposal at secured landfill or destruction in incinerator. The hazardous waste may be disposed at captive treatment facility installed by the individual waste generators or at common hazardous waste TSDFs. Disposal at TSDFs is advantageous as compared to the captive facility because of the reasons such as reduced capital investment, reduced cost of treatment, checking the mushrooming of treatment equipment in an area, easy implementation by the regulatory bodies, etc. The number of TSDFs in the country has increased gradually from 4 facilities in the year 2003 to 38 TSDFs in 16 states or union territories currently. Common facilities for disposing hazardous waste with secured landfills and incinerators are now available in 16 and 12 states or union territories respectively. These states or union territories contribute about 95.66% of total landfillable and 86.35% of total incinerable hazardous waste generation in the country respectively. The existing TSDFs have a cumulative capacity of about 32 million metric tons for secured landfilling and about 0.18 million tons per annum for incineration. Currently, there are 38 TSDFs including 17 integrated TSDFs with both secured landfill and incineration facilities, 8 TSDFs with only common incineration facilities, and 13 TSDFs with only common secured landfill facilities. A project on GIS, that is Geographical Information Systems based National Hazardous Waste Information System, has been initiated to provide status of hazardous waste management in the country. There are 141 hazardous waste dump sites that have been primarily identified in 14 states or union territories, out of which 88 critically polluted locations are currently identified. As per the report on National Inventory of Hazardous Waste Generating Industries and Hazardous Waste Management in India, total waste handling capacities of TSDFs is about 1.5 million tons per annum, and there is a deficit of about 1.2 million tons per annum for landfillable waste and about 0.9 million tons per annum for incinerable waste. Next, handling and management of hazardous waste in India. In India, rapid economic growth coupled with urbanization and industrialization is leading to the generation of large amount of waste, which needs to be properly handled and managed to reduce its adverse impacts on human health and the environment. National Hazardous Waste Management Strategy incorporates the essence of the National Environmental Policy 2006, relevant multilateral environmental agreements like the Basel Convention and the national regulations. This figure shows hierarchy of options for hazardous waste management. You can see the reduction at source or cleaner technologies is at the top. Next, recovery of resources and reuse of resources followed it, and followed by recycling of resources, incineration, and lastly, secured landfill with post-closure liability, the last option. National Environmental Policy 2006. The National Environment Policy 2006 has brought out the management aspects of hazardous waste in the form of an action plan, which includes develop and implement viable models of public-private partnerships for setting up and operating secured landfills, incinerators, and other appropriate techniques for the treatment and disposal of toxic and hazardous waste, both industrial and biomedical, on payment by users, taking the concerns of local communities into account. Develop and implement strategies for cleaning up of toxic and hazardous waste dump legacies, in particular in industrial areas and abandoned mines, and reclamation of such lands for future sustainable use. Survey and develop a national inventory of toxic and hazardous waste dumps and an online monitoring system for movement of hazardous waste, strengthen capacities of institutions responsible for monitoring and enforcement in respect of toxic and hazardous waste, strengthen the legal arrangements and response measures for addressing emergencies arising out of transportation, handling, and disposal of hazardous waste as part of the chemical accidents regime. Give legal recognition to and strengthen the informal sector systems of collection and recycling of various materials. In particular, enhance their access to institutional finance and relevant technologies. Develop and enforce regulations and guidelines for management of e-waste as part of hazardous waste regime. Next, Basel Convention. India, being a party to the Basel Convention on the control of transboundary movements of hazardous waste and their disposal, is required to fulfill its objectives regarding control and reduction of transboundary movements of hazardous waste. Other objectives of the Convention include prevention and minimization of generation of such waste, promotion of their environmentally sound management, and active promotion of the transfer and use of cleaner technologies. Next is regulatory framework. To regulate management of hazardous waste generated within the country as well as export or import of such waste, the Hazardous Waste Management and Handling Rules 1989 were notified under the Environment Protection Act 1986. The rules were amended extensively over the years. The Ministry of Environment and Forest has notified the Hazardous Waste Management, Handling and Transboundary Movement Rules 2008, repealing the earlier rules so as to make the rules more practical and effective in implementation. The National Hazardous Waste Management Strategy is being finalized for effective management of hazardous waste so as to avoid environmental pollution and adverse effects due to improper handling and disposal. A coordination mechanism for effective implementation of the Hazardous Waste Rules 2008 by the custom authorities at the ports has been established. The Hazardous Waste Rule 2008 are the primary regulations addressing the management of hazardous waste in India. Recycling of e-waste has also been addressed under these rules. The Hazardous Waste Rules 2008 were framed for regulating generation, storage, reuse, recycling, import, transportation, and treatment of hazardous waste. India signed and ratified the Basel Convention dealing with transboundary movement and disposal of hazardous waste. The restrictions on cross-border transportation of hazardous waste for purposes of recycling as provided in the Basel Convention are incorporated in the hazardous waste rules. Hazardous waste has been defined in Rule 3 of the Hazardous Waste Rules 2008 as any waste which by reason of any of its physical, chemical, reactive, toxic, flammable, explosive or corrosive characteristics causes danger or is likely to cause danger to health or environment, whether alone or when in contact with other waste or substances, and shall include waste listed in column 3 of Schedule 1, waste having constituents listed in Schedule 2 if their concentration is equal to or more than the limit indicated in the said schedule, and waste listed in List A and List B of Schedule 3 applicable only in cases of import with prior informed consent and for import and export not requiring prior informed consent. The rules lay down corresponding duties of various authorities such as the Ministry of Environment and Forest, Central Pollution Control Board, state or union territory governments, state pollution control boards or pollution control committees, Directorate General of Foreign Trade, Port Authority and Custom Authority. The SPCVs or PCCs have been designated with wider responsibilities touching across almost every aspect of hazardous waste generation, handling, and their disposal. The waste that are excluded from the definition of hazardous waste include the waste covered under the Water Prevention and Control of Pollution Act 1974, the Air Prevention and Control of Pollution Act 1981, the Municipal Solid Waste Management and Handling Rules 2000 made under the Environment Protection Act, the Biomedical Waste Management and Handling Rules 1998 made under the Environment Protection Act, radioactive waste as covered under the Atomic Energy Act 1962. Other rules that address the management of hazardous waste include the Batteries Management and Handling Rules 2001 and the E-Waste Management and Handling Rules 2011. Next is categories of hazardous waste. The National Hazardous Waste Management Strategy encompasses the following categories of hazardous waste. First is industrial waste generated during production such as rejects or process residues, spent chemicals or solvents, spent catalyst, hazardous dust collected from air pollution control devices, sludge arising from wastewater treatment plants, etc. Dead expired products such as obsolete pesticides and medicines. Discarded products such as fluorescent bulbs and tubes containing mercury, used batteries, etc. E-waste. Hazardous waste from demolition including ship-breaking activities. Used oil or waste oil. Used lead-acid batteries. Next is hazardous waste generation. Based on the data provided by the SPCVs in the states and PCCs in the respective union territories, the CPCB or Central Pollution Control Board has compiled state-wise inventory of hazardous waste generating industries and published National Inventory of Hazardous Waste Generating Industries and Hazardous Waste Management in India in February 2009. A total of about 36,165 industries generate total quantity of about 6.23 million tons per annum of hazardous waste. Small and medium-sized enterprises are the major generators. Environmentally sound manner. Depending on the waste category, physico-chemical or biological treatment, secured land disposal, incineration, or any other mode of safe and environmentally sound disposal should be adopted. Supervision of such facilities during construction stage would be necessary to ensure quality of the construction of the disposal facilities as per guidelines of the Central Pollution Control Board. Post-closure monitoring of the disposal facilities would also be necessary. This figure shows components in the waste management hierarchy, and here you can see the preferences have been shown in ascending order. The first option should be prevention, followed by preparing for reuse, recycling and recovery, and the disposal should be the last. Next, setting up of the common treatment, storage and disposal facilities. The annual capacities of the TSDFs range from 10,000 tons per annum to 1.2 lakhs tons per annum with an operating lifespan of 15 to 30 years. Common facilities, including integrated facilities, have to be planned following the polluter pays principle. That is, the principle to make polluter responsible for producing pollution. They should pay for the pollution they have made. At the initial stages, a certain level of assistance. Next, setting up of the common treatment, storage and disposal facilities. The annual capacities of the TSDFs range from 10,000 tons per annum to 1.2 lakhs tons per annum with an operating lifespan of 15 to 30 years. Common facilities, including integrated facilities, have to be planned following the polluter pays principle. That is, the principle which makes the polluter responsible for the pollution they have produced. They should pay for the damage they have made by producing pollution. At the initial stages, a certain level of assistance from the state government would significantly accelerate the process of setting up of these facilities and also ensure their viability in the initial years, which is vital. For example, making land available at concessional rates, providing financial support matching the central subsidy. Location of TSDF should be close to the sources of generation. The capacity of an integrated waste management facility should be decided based on availability of hazardous waste in the state or in nearby area. Such a facility should comprise a secured landfill, arrangements for treatment, incinerator, a laboratory capable of comprehensive analysis and arrangement for transportation and handling of waste, including supporting infrastructure. Such a facility could also have arrangement for recovery, recycling or reprocessing. During operation and for a stipulated period of post-closure, liability for any damage caused shall rest with the TSDF operator. Next is interstate transportation of hazardous waste. Interstate movement of hazardous waste will be required when landfillable waste generated by a state is less than 10,000 tons per annum. A company with units located in several states proposes to incinerate waste at one facility and incinerable waste generation in a state is less than 5,000 tons per annum, at which level an incineration facility becomes financially viable. Based on mutual consultations and agreement between the state governments, interstate movement of hazardous waste should be permitted, in particular to take care of the difficulties faced by some states for development of TSDFs. For properly tracking of hazardous waste disposal in an environmentally sound manner by the SPCPs or PCCs, the manifest system, that is movement document of movement of hazardous waste, shall be followed as per the hazardous waste regulations. The SPCB or PCC should develop online tracking system for movement of hazardous waste from generation to the disposal, recovery or recycle stage. Next is use of cement kilns for hazardous waste incineration. Subject to the implementation of suitable safeguards, incineration of high calorific value hazardous waste in cement kilns is one of the safe alternatives to conventional incineration. The spread of cement industry in the country across the states makes this option particularly attractive. Sludge from petrochemical industry, oil refinery and paint industry as well as paint solvents or solvent recovery residues from pesticide and bulk drug industries are particularly suitable for this purpose in view of their high calorific value. Next is illegal dump sites and remediation. Remediation or rehabilitation of dump sites should be based on scientific assessment of contamination of soil and groundwater and based on modeling the projected future damage. The approach for site remediation of dump sites would vary from site to site depending on the nature of pollutants, future damage potential, remediation cost, etc. The remediation strategy would include excavation of waste at site and shifting it to the nearest TSDF or establishing a dedicated secured landfill. Site remediation measures may be taken up to prevent further spread of contamination through containment measures. In any case, the polluter pays principle has to be strictly enforced. Next is strengthening of infrastructure of regulatory bodies. The mantle of hazardous waste management regulation is primarily on the SPCBs at the fifth level. For effective discharge of their responsibility, the boards have to be strengthened in terms of manpower, equipment, instruments, and other infrastructure facilities. The Customs Department plays an important role in regulating import of hazardous waste into the country. Priority areas for action include harmonization of EXIM, that is the export-import policy regulations, with the provisions of the hazardous waste rules, training of the Customs Department personnel engaged in inspection and sampling, and also upgradation of the Customs Department laboratories. Appraisers carrying out inspection of hazardous waste received need to be trained to pick up representative samples. In addition to sampling techniques, appraisers should be made aware of current hazardous waste regulations, documentation requirements, etc. Equally important is the need to upgrade laboratory facilities at all major ports of entry. Harmonization of the customs codes with the international system as amended from time to time should also be accorded high priority. Next is disposal of dead expired drugs and pesticides. The options available are to have these reprocessed wherever possible by the industry that supplied them. And the next option is to appropriately incinerate them either through dedicated incinerators of individual industries or through incinerators available with common facilities. And the last is handling and management of hazardous waste during ship dismantling. These include used oil, waste oil, asbestos containing panels or tiles, damaged asbestos containing material, paint chips, and unused chemicals like acids, etc. Some of these materials can be used directly, such as asbestos panels, unused chemicals, etc. Some can be sold to recyclers, and others need to be disposed of in the TSDFs. Adequate safety systems and procedures need to be adopted during dismantling and handling of these materials or wastes. This activity is required to be regulated through the state maritime boards, SPCBs, and factory inspectors as per the comprehensive code of the Ministry of Steel. So to summarize, the hazardous waste have become an important environmental and public health issue across many countries in the world. Rapid development coupled with urbanization and improvement of various industrial technologies, products and practices is increasing hazardous waste generation, which is adversely affecting the environment. Any waste that, by virtue of any of its physical, chemical, reactive, toxic, flammable, explosive, or corrosive characteristics causes danger or is likely to cause danger to human health or the environment, whether alone or when in contact with other waste or substances, is defined as hazardous waste. The hazardous waste substance can be solid, semi-solid, or non-aqueous liquid. Some examples of hazardous waste include used or spent oil, discarded asbestos, pesticides, solvents, etc. Some common industrial sources of hazardous waste include chemical and pharmaceutical manufacture, petroleum and coal products, metals refining, etc. Hazardous waste may cause explosion or fire, infection, chemical instability, reactions or corrosion, acute or chronic toxic effects, cancer, mutations or birth defects, or damage to ecosystems or natural resources. Management of waste in an environmentally sustainable manner is a challenging task. In addition to proper hazardous waste disposal or, if necessary, remediation of contaminated sites, it is important to minimize the production and impact of hazardous waste and to recover and recycle resources where feasible. The Hazardous Waste Management, Handling and Transboundary Movement Rules 2008 are the primary regulations addressing the management of hazardous waste in India. The common treatment, storage and disposal facilities are facilities used by various units or industries for treatment, storage and disposal of their hazardous waste on charge basis. As per the current information obtained from the SPCBs or PCCs, updated inventory of hazardous waste generation reveals that there are about 41,523 number of hazardous waste generating industries in India, generating about 7.90 million tons of hazardous waste per annum. Currently, there are 38 TSDFs, including 17 integrated TSDFs with both secured landfill and incineration facilities, 8 TSDFs with only common incineration facilities, and 13 TSDFs with only common secured landfill facilities. A project on GIS, that is Geographical Information Systems based National Hazardous Waste Information System, has been initiated to provide status of hazardous waste management in the country. Thanks for visiting EPG Pathshala and listening to this module.